So building the rear cupboards above the bench. I used an online cut-in plan. I will put a link for that website because it's really good and it's free to use. I had 2 furniture boards left and I wanted to try and get the most out of them. I didn't want to buy another furniture board, so I've got 2 furniture boards left. This is the cutting plan. To create an overlay shower door, I would have needed to have bought another furniture panel, which was going to be quite expensive. I would have needed a whole panel just to cut out, you know, something like a 1600 by 600 piece, and then there would have been loads left. It was going to be effectively 110 quid for a shower door, and so I haven't got it here, but what I've decided to use is, I'm not sure what you call it, but it's basically some trim which you so you cut out your door and then you put some trim around the door that forms the edge of the door and the lip, and then there's some trim that goes around the hole that you cut out. You cut it out with a 6mm router. So that's how I'm going to do my shower door and my cassette door, which is going to be different to how everything else is in the van, but you sometimes have to try and cut some costs somewhere. I've already probably bought 5 furniture boards, so that's 550 quid just on furniture boards. And you sort of look in the van and you think, where are they? The bits that's left on here, I have also got to get all my cupboard fronts, which I should be able to do that. What I did, I'll show you in the van in a minute, but I dry fitted these 3 boards. So these are the bottoms of the cupboards. And then when I dry fitted them, I basically just held them with about 3 screws. The middle one underneath was the last one to fit. Got that to fit as well as I could, and then it was just a matter of drawing on it. So I've decided on a depth from the edge of the LED strip, and I seem to have been using 50mm from this edge on the others. So I've done these the same. Whether it's going to work or not, I don't know. But I've got a 90 degree there, so this is the left or the right hand side bottom of the cupboard. So the LED strip's going to come along there, and then I'm doing a 90 degree, which is going to meet up with this, hopefully. It has left, as ever, the edge of this a bit raggedy, so I'm just going to take that edge off with some sandpaper. So yeah, so in the van, these are my end cupboards. And so what I did, I dry fitted the bottoms, just held them in with a couple of screws, and then marked out on them where they intersect on each side. Basically, this one was clamped in place. So I marked on there where they intersect, and that's where I've done my router cut for the LED. Once that's done, there's not much else to do with those really. I need to drill a hole up there for my wired connections and then fit it all back in and then fit the LED rail. So my 3 boards for under the cupboards in the back of the van are all prepared. Whilst I've got them in the garage on the bench, what I decided to do is install as much of the LED as possible because it's not easy working upside down. So this is the supply end. So I've cut the channel just a little bit short, but we can cover that over with the lid and you won't see that. So then I've got my tail for my LED going through. So I've got the first piece in, and then you can probably get some 90 degree connectors for this. What I'm doing, I'm just spacing it out to whatever length I can get, because that is one section of LED, so I'm not going to be able to get an exact length, and I'm quite happy with how that's going to be. And the next one I get might be a little bit closer in. Again, it's hidden, you know, you're not directly looking at it. So then that goes across to this board. So I've pre-cut LED channels for this, and they've already got the bevel on. There's my board to the other side. What I've also got above the bed is these LED spotlights. I got one of these, if you remember, maybe if you've seen one of my other videos, for above the bench seat. And I just think that they're a really nice light. So again, whilst the board's here, I'm attaching the brackets because these brackets, they have a screw through the side. And installing this is going to be a corner if you like, and it's going to be really hard to get those screws in because it was on the other one. So thinking forward, already mounting the brackets. I'm already going to mount these with the tail through. Once I put this board up, that'll all be done with the lights mounted. So this is how I've been making my cupboards. It's probably not the lightest. When I initially built these frames, I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to finish off the front. I did get some vinyl stuff that matched my Chambord oak, and thinking that I could stick that on here and then put my cupboard doors on there. Don't know how long that was going to last, don't know how long it was going to remain stuck. The other thing was that this wood is not deep enough for Euro hinges to be able to fix them. So you need another depth of wood behind it. A lot of thought gone into it. There was always going to be furniture board on the bottom to finish them off because I've got LED in there. And so in the end, I just thought I'll just clad the front of it in furniture board. And yes, I am cutting quite a bit out of it. All the wood that you buy to build a van, you will end up with a trailer load that's going to the skip. So anyway, I've cut a piece, so that piece goes on there, and then what you do on the back with a pencil, draw around the opening in the frame and then cut out that piece, and so that gives you the extra thickness of wood for your hinge, and it's clad the front. A couple of tips here for you. When you cut out, so that's got 90-degree corners. I've learned that when you make your drawer fronts, you don't really want a 90-degree because you can't get the furniture trim, you can't get the T-trim, sorry, around a 90-degree corner. And so you have to have a curve on your door that basically that shows the corner. So hence why I've cut curves on these. I'm using this corner trim. It's not too expensive, and I really like the finish that it gives. So basically that goes on there. Okay, well, so this is just a short piece. I'll just stick that on there just to show you this. So that goes on there. There, so that will give that finish there. But just a point to note, if you are going to use this, you have to leave. So if I put this back up here, the boards that you are covering, you need to leave a stepped gap because of this difference here. So if I grab a pencil, I can show you this drill. So you see the difference between there and there. You have to account for that, and it's actually a step from there to there. So this board coming in at this angle, okay, this board needs to finish lower than the bottom of this board to account for that. But basically when it's finished, it looks like this, and it just gives a nice finish on there as well. So here's a little tip to get your furniture board to have a really tight finish. So if you're joining two bits of furniture board, sort of like that, and let's say it's very easy to end up with a gap like that, because one of the problems with van building is nothing is square, like nothing, and you're trying to produce things that might be square building from the side of your van, which could be like, you know, 50 to 75 mil that way. So a little tip, when you join in two bits of furniture board together to get a nice tight join, when you cut that, put a tilt on your saw head. You only want like 10 degrees at the most, so position your head around 8-10 degrees and then cut your furniture board, and that tiny angle, right, will ensure that you get a tight joint like that and not one that's got a gap. Well, it's not a quick job. It took me all of yesterday. So this is all of my rear end cupboards, fascias and bottoms done. On the rear, I'm basically putting a panel completely across there to finish that off. The LED is powered up and that is the sensor there for it. So if I touch my hand there, it goes off, touch it again, comes on, hold it, and it will dim, touch it again, it goes off. These are powered up and I really like those. I think they're really nice spotlights. So yeah, that's took me a day, a lot of measuring. This is not easy to do. So a lot of fitting, a lot of measuring. And so what I'm going to start to do now, and it'll be a bit of a production line, is making doors. But once you start doing one, they'll be all the same. I think I mentioned in an earlier video about building the cupboard fronts, and I initially did these. Wasn't 100% happy with them, and it was mainly to do with the radius of the T-trim. And I initially thought you needed quite a big radius. You don't need a massive radius. What I've been doing is drawing around a mastic tube, and that probably gives a decent sort of radius that's okay for T-trim, it seems. So I'm redoing these, set up a bit of a production line because I've got 10 to do, and I'm happy with that. So I've got my curved, and then I've got my tight frame on the door. So what I've done, I've set up a couple of a jig and a method, if you like, of producing this door and it working. And what I'm doing now is I'll transfer that to all the other doors. So here we are, sawdust everywhere. So I measured and mapped all the doors, and then I came up with a system of what I need to add to the door to fit right and what works with the hinges. So currently I've cut all my doors out. They're all labelled up 1 to 10. This is where I'm drawing the radius on the corners, which I'm doing on that. I've got a jig that I've made. So that is for drilling the holes for the handles, because that is something which can take quite a while. What I'm going to do now is find the centre line of all of these, draw a line down the middle, and then mark out for both that and Craig jig for drilling out for the hinges. And then we've got the T-trim. Router is set up with the 6mm cutter, so it'll be a case of marking out the boards, getting the centre line, drill the holes for the handle, sand all the corners, cut the 6mm slot for the T-trim, put the T-trim on, drill the holes for the Craig, because the Craig is also relying on the thickness of the T-trim. I've had to go like an extra 5mm for the depth because of how these hinges fall. So a final panel I've got to do here, which is the back of the cupboards, and it doesn't need to be hefty timber. It is literally just to form a back. So I cut a piece of cardboard and I made a template to fit up in each side of that corner. So that's left hand side, and it works that way around as well for the other side, because I did both sides the same. And then you measure basically across the bottom. And so I have cut out this piece of 3mm ply, and what I'm going to do, I'm currently painting it just with some primer, and that is purely to form a key. I bought this quite a while ago. It's sticky vinyl and it's chambord oak, so it matches the furniture board. I didn't want to do, well, I didn't have any furniture board left to do this, and there's no need for it to be that big and heavy. So what I'm going to do, I've sanded it down and painting it just with a primer, which will form a key for this stuff. And then I'm going to stick this. At the minute, I think I'm going to do the grain vertical, but I might change my mind, because if I do it vertical, I'm going to have probably 2 joins along the way, and I need to look at how that's going to work. This won't take long to dry because it's a very nice day. So completed that. This is the self-adhesive vinyl, and I think it's quite a good effect actually. You can't see where the joins are, so I've done the grain vertical. I pre-drilled some holes in this, so I just need to pop the holes through from the back and then put some screws in. I'll put some caps on them. Job done. That's done. The sticky stuff has just pushed off. The sticky stuff had just pushed off a little bit there, but what I may do is I've got some 90-degree trim. I've got some other jobs to do with it first, but I'll probably put some 90-degree trim all along there. That's pretty good. So that's basically just the back of those cupboards. It's really just the back of those cupboards. I suppose I probably could have put some carpet or something in there, but there's no need really. It is just literally the back of the cupboard. So there we go. Completes the back end really.